So this is maybe one of the most extraordinary aspect here, is that alongside to the great tradition of transcendence, there has always existed great tradition. I speak about it in the Chamatkara as the hidden path, the great tradition of fuller embodiment. So in other words, instead of foregoing the body, transcending the body, we are embodying or invited to embody our essence even deeper into this, what is understood as not epiphenomena, but as the body of God.
So you just spoke about the divinization of the body and referred to Sri Aurobindo's work, but I also know he talked about the divinization of matter. And at the beginning of the immersion, you spoke about how mind and matter are related. So I was wondering if you could speak more into that.
Interesting, yes. It's a good question. Well, divinization of the body and divinization of the matter here really implies the same thing. It really, we cannot speak of the body here. So it's just the words that Sri Aurobindo used, divinization of the matter, right? Like in the earlier even writings, in his letters on yoga, there is a constant red thread that runs through, is marrying two, what prior to that, prior to Aurobindo's time, was seen as very different veins, often running counter to each other. That of the ascent, dubbed as a lower path, and that of the descent, which was spoken of as a higher path. And those of you who are familiar with the situation, with the time, that I remember reading about it very vividly, that when Sri Aurobindo heard of the rising popularity of Ramana Maharshi, because Ramana Maharshi reached tremendous popularity during his lifetime, we forget that he was known well beyond India. Right? He was known to the intellectuals of Europe. People like Romain Rolland, Carl Jung knew of the existence of Ramana Maharshi. So that it is known that Sri Aurobindo exclaimed, finally the end of the lower path. Finally the end of the lower path. What the lower path was referred to is that long yogic tradition of forcible awakening of Kundalini by manipulation primarily of the pranic forces. So pranayama were utilized here primarily to awaken Kundalini. There are, of course, a lot of this assessments of that situation. It's a classical topic of discussion made. I'm not sure if I want to go into the all the nitty-gritty of what it represents. So effectively speaking, that's what the lower path was spoken of in terms with regard to the process. You probably remember in one of the online darshans, just more recent ones, whether in response to the question, I don't recall now, but I felt like clarifying the difference between the approaches also, the more masculine and more feminine approach, right? And also the approach of the yogis where the emphasis is on that power, right? That power, that virya rising. And the approach of the tantrikas is to bring goddess in. So the approach is this. The approach is through the surrender, when one gives one's being for the goddess to simply indwell, to take over. So this is a samavesha, even though I didn't use that term back then. So Sri Aurobindo's reference to that and his some speak of it as prophetic writing and way how he seen that with regard to marrying of the two processes, so that he did not want to discard that what is represented by the ascent of Kundalini, obviously, because there's among the Tantrikas, that's what it is. But so as to combine these two processes, that one of the descent and one of the ascent. And he felt that the descent here also represents that what awakened consciousness, fully awakened consciousness, then has to be brought down to the cellular structure of the body. And as a result, bringing this to the level of the senses. So in other words, so that to complete that full circle where perhaps it had been torn at some point, so that phenomenal experiences, that senses seem to be here as the cold mirror upon which we, against which we find ourselves repeatedly in a state of, let's say, not knowing, because the senses here further move us out of ourselves, because the sensory movement is always outward. For senses to function, prana oozes outward. It has to. Prana is what, prana is what imbues senses with the powers. Senses without the movement of prana outward do not have their capacity, their agencies. And in the one in whom this process takes its conclusive unfoldment, then the full circle is completed. Because then, according to Aurobindo, this descent heralds a very, very renewed state of affairs. And this is where it's very, very shy-wide in terms of the expression. I forgot whether this is Utpaladeva's quote or Abhinavagupta's, but it goes along the lines of that what for the ignorant is a constant source of concealment, for the enlightened is a confirmation of the state of unity. And this is with regard to the sensory experience. Amongst the close associates, I speak about it in terms of as direct as anything that is experienced, anything that one can touch, smell, hear, taste, constantly reminds one about one's essence. And before that, it constantly separates one from one's essence. Hence that saying of the aforementioned sage, one or the other, forgot the name. So for the one who doesn't know, it's a constant sorrow. It's a constant state of separation. And for the one who does, it's a constant reconfirmation of one's state of oneness. So this is why I speak about it as completion of the circle. So that the reality, this phenomenal reality, is not discarded as a useless epiphenomena, but lived to the fullness of one's embodiment. So this is maybe one of the most extraordinary aspect here, is that alongside to the great tradition of transcendence, there has always existed great tradition. I speak about it in the Chamatkara as the hidden path, the great tradition of fuller embodiment. So in other words, instead of foregoing the body, transcending the body, we are embodying or invited to embody our essence even deeper into this, what is understood as not epiphenomena, but as the body of God. So that reevaluation here, of course, Aurobindo spoke in his own language, and divinization of matter was this, his message to the coming generations, that the propensity is there somehow very strongly, that with the emphasis on the rational, there is a perpetual eradication of all where the Shaktis reside. Shaktis reside in tribal cultures. Shaktis reside in stitches of embroidery, just as sutras known as stitches. Shaktis reside in things made out of hand, where there's a pulsation, vibration. Shakti lives in tribal communities, in tea ceremonies, in dance, in fire ceremonies. And with the move towards digital, towards this, there's a greater fragmentation. And as it were, we move further away to the cold, icy age of artificial intelligence. So all this is now, this prophecy of Aurobindo is we literally coming to the final resolution of that, what he was warning about. So unless there is this process of bringing Shakti back into the world fully, there is this, a choiceless choice, in a way. And that's what we are faced with. So all these flares on the sun, all these talks about the shifts in magnetic shifts on the planet Earth, all could be seen in sync with what we experience here and now in terms of the transformation of human consciousness, because we are here embodying the totality of the universe as microcosm, macrocosm relationship. So every minute change within our neurophysiology, within our psyche, reflects that. It reflects and adds to the process. So this is why I've always spoken about it from day one, in terms of if one needs an encouragement, forget about yourself. It's nothing to do, it's not personal. Something else is happening behind the scenes. And if you need the confirmation, I'll give you all the confirmation. If you need reassurance, let's sit together. And this reassurance will come aplenty. So that one doesn't feel pathologized in a sick, deeply infected culture. Because the culture at large that we live in now and partake is rotting now as a dead corpse. See? So what I'm suggesting as tantrikas, we hop on top of it and do sadhana. So, wherever that came from, but you can adjust before lunchtime. So maybe appease your senses, smell some flowers on the way. But thank you, Ebony. This was very.
Thank you for the confirmation, because that's what I intuitively was driven towards too. So I just wanted to.
Exactly. Yes, very much so. Very much so. This. Well, we are placed in the Garden of Eden as guardians. It's up to us. There's no one else gonna come. So you want a biblical interpretation? Well, God washed his hands. He left us to ourselves, our own devices. And we're gonna fool around, or we're going to take it into our job and role of being true guardians. So this is being decided now. It's being decided. It's playing itself out. And it's a choiceless choice. So it's not like as if we're given multiple choices about this. because that force that is set in motion, it has trajectory. And by these very laws, if something has trajectory, it goes along these lines of trajectory. So all that, what we watch in silver screen and what we watch in Hollywood movies and all these ideas are not just entertainment, this is reality of how it's playing itself out very, very clearly, with the cohabitation or intermarriage between the artificial intelligence and human nervous system, with all these ideas of transgenerism and transgenderism, is why perhaps the awakening comes from the core of the earth, from the magma itself now. So it's no longer there like for coveted few who given their life to the awakening. This is like, it needs to have that critical mass point. It has to have that critical mass point where that flip can happen, that shift can happen. So reflect on that, each in your capacity. So it's very easy to be really taken over by one's problems, one's limitations. But if there is enough spark of awareness, and make it into a fire and feed all this with all these limitations, because they're food for that fire. You feed the fire of your awareness with all these idiosyncrasies.